a buckler be used with a two-handed weapon? Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. Now, in a lot of my videos, I say that you're welcome to ask questions in the comments underneath, and sometimes these might result in a video. And indeed, I had a comment from Serendas. Thank you very much for your comment underneath my video about round shields. Saying that, Serendas said that in the D&D rulebook, it says that a buckler can be used alongside a two-handed weapon. Presumably in two hands, that is. Now, in some situations with something like a pike or a spear, I can see that working, but Serendas asked a more broad question about the use of two-handed weapons, in this case a Dane specifically, and also two-handed swords, and we'll look at the sword in a second, used with a buckler. Well, the first thing we have to say is bucklers come in various forms. Now, some people might call something like this a large buckler. This is a bit on the large side to be called a buckler, but there are smaller versions of these, or indeed things like Highland targes, which are held with straps and do actually leave the hand free. Now, theoretically, yes indeed, you could use a two-handed weapon and wear one of these shields at the same time. Now, it's pretty awkward and loud, you'll notice as well. It's pretty awkward, but technically you could kind of do it because your hand's free. One of the problems, if we're explicitly talking about bucklers, is that certainly in Europe, most bucklers have a form of bar at the back. Now, you can hold things in there, but bear in mind that that bar is about the same thickness as the shaft of a pole weapon or the handle of a sword or something like that. So if you're already holding that, trying to then additionally hold another shaft as well, you can kind of do it, but it's not comfortable and it's not very convenient. Now, if you can do it once, you can presumably do it twice. I don't know if that's in the D&D rulebook, but yes, indeed, you can hold a Dane axe whilst holding two bucklers. Now, as I say, there are differences between different grips on bucklers. Now, if we put those sort of typical medieval European bucklers down for a second and we go instead to the I was going to say the Indian dar, and this is an Indian dar, but in fact this is a type of shield which you could find all over the Middle East and North Africa as well. Probably originates within the Ottoman Empire and Persia and spreads out from there. But this has two straps, so instead of a bar in the middle, you've got two straps. Now, I would argue that that type of buckler is, I'm now drowning in bucklers and weapons, disentangle them. I would argue that that type of buckler is actually slightly better for gripping, although funnily enough, it's not, for a reason I hadn't anticipated. Now, this is interesting because this is experimentation and discovery right before your very eyes, folks, because I've not tried this ever before as far as I can remember. What's interesting is there is a conflict between me gripping something with this particular buckler because of the shape of the buckler, because it is convex or concave on the back, convex on the front. Because it's a domed shield, I can't quite get my hand around that shaft enough to hold it. I mean, I can just about do, but it's kind of hurting my hand, to be honest. So, against all expectation, certainly against what I expected, it's actually easier to grip the two-handed weapon with the European-style buckler with a bar in the middle than with the two-strapped one, which isn't what I expected. Now, the question also Serendas asked was about two-handed swords and there being a problem with the complex hilt. Well, when you say complex hilt, obviously you're not going to be able to hold something that's got like a swept hilt or a basket hilt or anything like that if you're holding bucklers. But if something's just got a cross guard, I mean, I can see the side rings might be a problem. So let's see what happens. So first of all, if I get the two-handed sword off the wall, if it's at the bottom end, we've got no problem at all. Okay, so there's no problem really. I mean, I'm losing dexterity because I'm trying to grip essentially two handles at the same time. But if I've got my hand at the bottom end, at the pommel end of the sword, I can, it's not very convenient because my hand's struggling to keep a grip on the bottom end. But there's no conflict between the buckler and the crossguard because it's this hand that's got the buckler on it. Now, if I try and, where's that other buckler? I'm literally drowning in shields here, folks. If I try and hold that, yes, indeed, there is a clash there because the buckler is completely clash with the side rings. However, if I put this zweihander, if you want to call it that, down for a second, and I now go to the windlass two-hander here, it's kind of a big longsword really, this doesn't have the side rings. Okay, so this is actually probably more correct or appropriate for most D&D environments, I would say, rather than the 16th century style hilt. And in that case, I can kind of grip it, because certainly the side rings are not a problem anymore. Now, oh no, it locks up my wrist. So part of the problem is that this buckler is too big and it's domed as well. And what happens, I will show you. What happens is, in fact, it locks against the crossguard there, which means that I don't have movement of my wrist anymore, which is a problem because I need to be able to do that, and by holding the buckler, it locks my forearm and wrist essentially into the same line as the crossguard. So that doesn't work at all. So essentially we've discovered that yes, it doesn't really work. Even if you've got side rings, it definitely doesn't work. And even if you don't have side rings, it doesn't work very well with just a conventional cross hilt either. So that brings us back to the Dane axe. Can I hold two bucklers? Let's put the big buckler on my left hand this time and the small buckler on my right hand. Can I hold a Dane axe? Oh, it's not easy or convenient, but I can just about do it. Oh. So, the answer to the question is, it is physically possible and you can swing the weapon. So if there's some very specific reason why your hands have to absolutely be protected for you to run in and give a big swing, then yes, I guess it would be plausible. But certainly if you're thinking about this within a role-playing game or a any other kind of game, video game context, I think what you have to do is, if you try and do something crazy like that, then you have to reduce your abilities, your skill or your dexterity with the main weapon. Just like anything, just like if you put armor on, yeah, you're very protected, but you're paying for that with, your stamina is going to suffer, you're going to get hotter, you're a little bit slower moving, you don't have such good vision and hearing, all of these other things you know about from my videos. So quite simply, if you try and hold two bucklers at the same time as using a weapon, you're not going to be able to use the weapon as well as you would if you weren't holding those bucklers. But admittedly, those bucklers will protect your hands. And I would also finally throw in as well, if we bring larger shields into this, anything that I've just said for the buckler really does go for the boss grip shield as well, because that is really a big buckler and probably where the buckler came from. So technically I can swing a two-handed axe, not from many angles, but certainly from my right side, whilst holding the shield up here. Now that might be interesting from a gaming context to you, because if, for example, you've got archers shooting at you, it might be beneficial to charge down the archers with your shield in front and still be able to hit them with the Dane axe at the last minute. Again, you've lost a huge amount of dexterity with the Dane axe, but you could still block some things with it, with the axe, if someone swings at you, and you can certainly swing to some degree from one side, and you have then therefore got the shield in front of you. And we know that historically, of course, shields were worn with the guige on the back at the same time as using two-handed weapons, and just the same again, the benefit you get from that is that your back's now protected from arrows or people swinging swords at your back, but the penalty you pay is you're now carrying that extra weight, you're a little bit less maneuverable, it probably gets in the way some of the time, and it may slightly reduce your usage and your dexterity with this weapon. So, there we go, thank you very much for the question. As I always say, if you've got an interesting question of your own, if it's interesting enough and it catches my interest and I have an answer for it, or I just want to find an answer for it, then I might make a video about it. So thank you very much for your contributions. I hope this has been interesting. See you again soon. Remember to click a like and subscribe if you haven't done already, and I'll see you again on the channel. Cheers, folks! Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers, folks.